Good afternoon. I'm Dave Jones with Storm Center Communications and GeoCollaborate. This is a 12 o'clock update in the afternoon on Monday, September 26th. Folks, we have a serious storm on our hands, and Hurricane Ian has strengthened since yesterday. It was a tropical storm yesterday. Now it's a hurricane with 80-mile-per-hour winds, and it's continuing to strengthen and expected to become a major hurricane over the next 12 to 24 hours. Here's what it looks like from the satellite perspective. You can see Ian spinning south of Cuba. As a matter of fact, some of those showers on the outer bands of the storm are actually reaching the Keys right now and parts of southern Florida. I'll show you that in GeoCollaborate here shortly. But there's another system spinning in the central Atlantic, but all eyes right now are on Ian because this could be Tampa Bay's worst nightmare of a hurricane, making landfall north of the city. So the strong south and southwesterly winds pushing water, a lot of water, into Tampa Bay. Areas to the south as well, Sarasota, Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, those areas are under serious threat for major storm surge flooding. I'll show you those as well when we get to GeoCollaborate. Let me take you a little bit closer and show you and remind you, for the folks here watching that are members of the Fleet Response Working Group and the All Hazards Consortium, this is a Phase 1 update. We are now within 24 to 72 hours of having this hurricane impact the coastal United States. We're talking about western Florida, the Gulf Coast of Florida, all the way from Fort Myers up to the Big Bend area. So we're in Phase 1, and you can see that here in the crawl right above me. This is a Phase 1 update. We'll continue to bring you these updates until we're in the recovery phase. So let me show you the satellite picture. This is what it looks like, folks. This is a mesoscale sector. This is from the GOES satellite, 22,300 miles up in space. And we're seeing imagery every single minute. This is enhanced imagery. It combines the visible sector with the infrared and brings texture, those thunderstorms, so we can see them popping up in this imagery. And now we see a circulation with this storm. We can see that counterclockwise rotation. Soon, over the next 6 hours or 12 hours, we'll see an eye start to develop within this storm. Could be sooner because pressures are dropping in the center of this storm. The National Hurricane Center does expect rapid intensification overnight tonight into tomorrow, with Hurricane Ian making landfall in western Cuba tonight. Let me show you a different satellite sector as well. This is a little bit more enhanced infrared picture, and it doesn't have the texture in it, but you can see those white storms. They're storms rotating around the center. This storm is trying to form an inner core, a central eye wall, if you will, which is going to become the most dangerous part of the hurricane. And so you can see more definition coming, and on the outer bands of the storm, you can see those orange areas and red areas. They are thunderstorms with very strong gusty winds, likely with tropical storm force winds underneath those clouds. We do have some lightning as well that's forming in some of these storms. Hurricanes don't typically have a lot of lightning, but when they interact with land or they have thunderstorms that are just forming and growing rapidly, we do see lightning, and there's a lot of it on the outer bands there. You don't see any in the inner core of the hurricane, and lightning by itself is not an indication of the hurricane rapidly strengthening. What we're looking at there is the central pressure of the storm. As that goes down and hurricane hunters from the Air Force and NOAA continue to fly into the storm, we will see and monitor that central pressure. And as it goes down, the wind speeds will go up. And we expect a Category 2, perhaps Category 3 system at landfall tonight in western Cuba. Here's GeoCollaborate. This is what the track looks like. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit, and I'll put my cursor in here. We'll zoom in here and show you this area in green is the area of tropical storm force winds. That's how much it extends out from the center. This will be elongated, but the more circular it looks with tropical storm force winds, storm force, which is 50 knot winds, and then hurricane force winds, which are 64 knot winds or 75 miles per hour. As this becomes more circular, concentric around the center, that's when we have a major storm with a strengthening tendency. We'll see this wind field expand as well as this storm moves towards the north. So this is what we're seeing already. We're seeing thunderstorms and rain impacting Cuba, even though the center of the storm is far away. Remember that. Don't watch the center line of the Hurricane Center's forecast. When that storm gets anywhere near close to the west coast, it's going to be pushing a lot of water. That means storm surge flooding, and a lot of rain is going to be preceding the storm, saturating the soils. Much of Central Florida has already received some heavy rain over the previous several weeks, so we have saturated soils. Let me just move to the north here and show you what it looks like. And as a matter of fact, I'll bring this full screen so you can see more of what's going on here. So here is Category 3 Ian emerging from the western tip of Cuba. It goes from a Category 2 south of Cuba to a Category 3 as it's emerging. That tells us that the land is not going to have much of an impact on the strength of this storm as it moves across western Cuba. Elevations are fairly low, and when you have a rapidly deepening storm, this little amount of land will tend not to really impact the circulation much. As a matter of fact, the Hurricane Center takes this to a Category 4 storm with 120 knot winds, that's 130 mile per hour winds, and maintains it as a Category 4 all the way to Wednesday morning. Now, here's something that I want to explain, and explain very closely to anybody who pays attention to categories of hurricanes. Even though the Hurricane Center has a Category 4 storm here, then a Category 3, and a Category 2, it does not mean you should prepare for a Category 2 storm upon landfall. You should prepare for a Category 4. Why? Because as a Category 4 storm out here, and I'm going to display the forecasted wind field. These are the wind fields for this storm. See how the wind field expands as the storm moves to the north. So we're talking the Category 4 storm here. This is how far out the tropical storm force winds will extend, all the way to Lake Okeechobee almost, when the storm is well offshore. Now watch when the storm becomes forecast Category 3. It could possibly maintain Category 4 status. Look at this wind field. Tropical storm force wind field from this storm all the way over to Port St. Lucie, Palm Bay, and Melbourne, Florida, where NASA is trying to launch Artemis. That mission has been scrubbed because of this storm coming towards Florida. But you can see how wide the wind field is. So when you have a Category 4 storm building up that ocean in storm surge, and that storm surge is headed for the coast, when the wind field expands because it becomes a Category 3, then a Category 2, it's going to continue that momentum of that storm surge moving on shore. That's why you should not pay attention to the category of the storm. We're going from a major Category 4 hurricane down to a Category 3, then a 2. It's still going to push all that ocean towards the land, so you're going to get major storm surge. Also, the rainfall. Expected rainfall. Let me turn off here the wind field forecast, and I'm going to turn on the peak storm surge. Now you see that here already displayed. I'm going to turn off for a second the active storm. So I'm going to turn off the forecast, and we're going to dive down here into St. Petersburg and Clearwater, where you can see this inundation forecast. This means 5 to 10 feet of storm surge is expected in Tampa Bay. That's 5 to 10 feet. Now, Pinellas County is urging their residents, particularly residents in low-lying areas, to evacuate today. And if you're in a mobile home or you live in a low-lying area, if you're planning to leave, county officials are saying to leave today. Leave right now. An evacuation order hasn't officially been issued for the county yet, but one will likely come tomorrow. But the sheriff there, Bob Giuliardi, said he put it very bluntly. He said, for all practical purposes, get out right now. And so let me dive in a little bit closer to what this looks like. Look at this inundation. This is Isla del Sol here. This is Conquina Key, all expected to be inundated with storm surge. Now, this is the coastal area. This also will be inundated. This surge example is simply from Back Bay flooding because so much water is going to be pushed into Tampa Bay. This is how it acts when it overflows. So there will be storm surge from the Gulf of Mexico coming in. It's not depicted here in this particular graphic, but there will be significant flooding all around the coastal areas of Tampa Bay. Also means bridges that are close to the water have a good chance of being cut off. So local officials will likely close the bridges when the winds reach tropical storm force winds or perhaps above 35 miles per hour and will remain closed until the surge and the wind threat diminishes. Let me go down here. Here's Sarasota Bay. Here's South Bradenton. Expect storm surge in that area along all of these coastal areas. Expect to be inundated. And also in Charlotte Harbor. This is Charlotte Harbor here. Expected a 4 to 7 foot storm surge predicted by the National Hurricane Center's Storm Surge Unit. That means that there's going to be serious and significant flooding around all of the areas surrounding Charlotte Harbor, including Punta Gorda. You remember Hurricane Charlie. Hurricane Charlie was a small, compact storm, but it produced a massive storm surge in Charlotte Harbor and Punta Gorda. Expect 4 to 7 feet of storm surge. Now I'm going to back out here and just show you the impacts of this predicted path. I'm going to turn back on the active storm so you can see what's going on here in with Ian. As a Category 3 storm is forecast for 8 o'clock Wednesday night to be here, and it's not very far. This is only 60 miles offshore. That's 60 miles from Sarasota. I'll turn that off again. And then when it's a Category 2 storm, it's only anticipated on being 24 miles from Clearwater. We're talking that the eye wall could be coming over Tampa Bay in this particular position. That means folks in Clearwater, anywhere near Clearwater, should evacuate and should evacuate now. Listen to your local officials. Listen to your local broadcast meteorologists. This is a serious storm, one in which you have never experienced before in the Tampa Bay area because of the angle that this storm is going to make landfall. It's going to continue to push south and southwesterly winds into Tampa Bay. And look at this. This is 8 a.m. on Wednesday and 8 a.m. on Thursday. So there's going to be a persistent wind that's going to go across tide cycles that will continue to push battering waves against the coastline. So significant flooding is likely throughout St. Pete Beach, Paso Grill, all of those areas down towards Sarasota as well on the coast. Expected wind impacts will be significant. Expect anybody living along the coast and probably about, let's measure this from the coastal area here inland by about 60 miles or 70 miles. Expect damaging winds from this storm. It could extend even further as well, with tropical storm force winds reaching the east coast of Florida. So I also want to say that mutual assistance from the utility companies are underway. So that means that utility companies from around the country are mobilizing their crews to come down the highways in streams of 10, 20, 50 bucket trucks at a time They're headed for Georgia and they're headed for Florida. They're going to be staging in very safe places. Very safe places they'll be staging so they can get into those areas that are impacted the most and restore power as fast as possible. But please remember, damage assessments need to be done before those crews can make it in there safely. Drones will be flying from some of the power companies so they can assess that damage. They'll be trying to drive in areas and see where they can do repairs the quickest. And they have to assess how much of the critical infrastructure needs to be replaced and repaired. So please be patient with these power companies. Power is likely to be out for an extended period of time because of this strong Category 4 expected Hurricane Ian to come in close to Tampa Bay. We also have major considerations from the military side, with MacDill Air Force Base located right on Tampa Bay and significant flooding expected there. They advise all sorts of operations over in the Middle East. So there's a lot of decisions that are being made there. We're keeping you posted. We'll have another update later this afternoon, probably after the official 5 p.m. update from the National Hurricane Center. Again, Ian is starting to strengthen. 80-mile-per-hour winds expected to strike Cuba as a strengthening Category 2 and emerging off the coastline as a Category 3 hurricane, and then strengthening into a Category 4 hurricane as it heads towards southwest Florida and the central Florida coastline on the Gulf Coast. So don't pay attention to the category of the storm. Once it reaches a Category 4, it's going to be pushing a lot of water towards the coastline. I also want to update you very quickly on impacts to Georgia. The state of Georgia will be experiencing heavy rains, flooding rains. As a matter of fact, I'm going to turn on right now the expected amount of rain that's expected over the next 7 days. So this is what's expected. And I'll turn this menu off here and show you what we are expecting. This is the path of Hurricane Ian that's expected to make landfall northwest of Tampa and then curve and sort of spin out over central Georgia. This could cause catastrophic flooding in southeast and central Georgia as this storm spins and starts to die out from shear. That's the strong winds that are expected to really impact this storm. But we're watching very closely from Atlanta, expecting 2 to 3 inches of rain over a 7-day period. Once the rain starts, to 5 to 7 inches of rain, perhaps even more, in southeast Georgia. That means there will be flooding in those areas. Also, the winds impacting Georgia from this tropical storm could reach 39 to 74 miles per hour in southeast Georgia, causing a lot of power outages and trees down in that location as well. We'll be monitoring these states. Rain from Ian will also extend into South Carolina and then into North Carolina. We'll include those states in briefings once that threat materializes. So for now, I'm Dave Jones with Storm Center Communications and GeoCollaborate. Thanks for watching this update. We'll be back later this afternoon after the 5 p.m. official Hurricane Center update. We'll keep you posted. Heed those warnings. If you're ordered to evacuate, please do so. Even if you evacuate, think you can get up higher because your condo is higher, critical infrastructure will be impacted by this storm. So you may not have power for a very long time, and you may not be able to drive anywhere or walk anywhere due to the hazards and the debris. Thanks for watching. We'll keep you updated.